Mental Health Monday
On Radio City Talk.
with Mick Coyle.
Tackling the stigma.
Radio City Talk.
Okay, so it's Radio City Talk. It's Mental Health Monday. Welcome to Mental Health Monday, that time of the week where we sit down and we talk about mental health on the radio. Now, I've got a guest in the studio this week who is going to share her story. We met a few weeks ago and I thought, you know what, she is the perfect guest for Mental Health Monday. We often talk about well-being and viewing the world in a certain way or not on this programme. And I think Val McKie from Touchpoint Change Consulting is the perfect guest. She describes herself as a corporate cheerleader, but she's done 1,000,001 things in her life so far. And she joins us on the programme. Val, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you too, Mick.
Thanks for coming on. You are now somebody who travels the world talking about positivity, about well-being, about making choices, doing the right thing. Yeah. It's an exciting life you lead now.
It certainly is, and I love every minute of it. So I'm very, very lucky because I do the thing that I love. Or, you know, when I was little, my parents would say, if you just stop talking for 5 minutes, and now I don't, and people actually want to listen to me. So that's great.
Tell us how far and wide you travel.
Well, I travel as far away as Australia and New Zealand. I'm off to Canada very soon, and I've worked in Russia, which is the most exotic of all the places I've worked. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of the work that you do, how much of it is based on your own personal lived experience?
I think quite a lot of it. I mean, it's great when you get to my age because, you can pretend to be really wise. It's a lot. It's a lot about the things I learned on my journey, coupled with the things I learned when I was at university and in work. So it's that combination, that melding of those experiences, which I think is really helpful. And I have a great thing that whatever happens in life, it's there's something that you can learn from it. And then I'm afraid I'm one of these people. Once I know something, it's like, the whole world needs to know this right now. So
what are those things when you look back through events in your life? What are those things that stand out as being key moments you realise now which actually changed the path on which you were travelling?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing was actually not keeping everything to myself and sharing it with a friend that I could trust. Because I think a lot of the things I had were thoughts I had in my head about who I thought I was, what I thought I was doing, what was expected of me. And I just very much kept that to myself. So at one level I would talk an awful lot, but at a deeper level I wouldn't share what I was actually feeling because I was ashamed of what I was feeling in many ways. So I think it was that, and it was always that sort of trying to look like everything is okay, looking like it was fine, because I didn't want conflict. And
in terms of those feelings that you kept hidden, what were those and what were they stemming from?
I think I think the issue was I was a very determined child. I think quite. Yeah, no, I was quite determined, and I always felt very adult. And I laugh now because I think there was never a day I woke up and went, "Oh, now I'm a grown up." And there's a part of me that thinks actually that's never going to happen. But I think it was that thing about feeling responsible for what was happening in the world, and I think probably the key thing for me that happened, and it happened when I was 9, was that I had a crush on a teacher at school. And I was in my element and ecstatic when that teacher at school kissed me as a 9-year-old, and I thought this was the most fabulous thing that had happened. I don't actually remember what happened after that event, but I kept a diary at the time, and it was quite a funny. The diary was really quite funny in terms of it had that mixture. I've still got it. I found it when I was clearing out one time, and it had like a mixture of stories about this teacher's telling us to do joined-up writing. And then I've got this other thing about today, this teacher kissed me, and it was wonderful. Right, and didn't write anything else after that. But in the sort of same page, I've got this teacher doing this and another teacher telling me to do something, which I've written, this is just ridiculous. Right, in terms. So I think as a 9-year-old, it was quite impressive that I could spell the word ridiculous. Right. But what happened after that, I really don't know, because I have no memory of it. But because I look back now, and when I read the diary now, and I read it after I'd actually been scammed. I was scammed after my husband died, so sort of like 40 years later. I was scammed on the internet, and I was listening to somebody actually doing a radio interview about it and sort of saying, oh, these scammers groom people. And I'm thinking, well, 40 years down the line, actually nothing had changed in my world. That had happened. I was groomed as a child, and here I was being groomed again, which was an interesting thing. So it was looking at that. So I'd had that experience, and then some other things happened after that. And I just basically sort of locked into myself going, well, I really don't think I'm a very nice person. And so really what I need to do is go out into the world and make everybody happy, because I'm not very nice. So I sort of have to make up to it for people. And I made probably the most powerful decision that I made was I wouldn't have any children, because I figured out that my children would not be very nice either, and I wouldn't be able to look after them. So that was it. And I made those decisions and I locked them in. And that was a vow that I locked in, and then carried on living my life. I started working in a shop. I used to be really shy. My first job was in a shop. I actually loved that because it was that barrier between me and the customer, and that was great. But I actually spent years sort of doing things. I enjoyed the work that I did. I started working with young people on youth training programs. I was quite able to handle them because I'd not been the best person at school. So it was great. And I loved working with the young people. And then the company that I worked for sort of said, oh, you're really good at working with young people, Val, we'd like you to sort of work with managers. And I went into industry for the first time and saw that I couldn't believe what I actually saw. And it was like, for me, it was really simple stuff. And I would sort of say to people, I go, how do you feel if someone shouts at you? And people go, well, because I'd say, what would you do? If someone shouts at you in public, what would you do? And people go, oh, I do this. And I went, so why are you surprised that your employees actually do that? So I developed some quite interesting management programs, which I really loved. So I lived life at two levels. So I had this sort of quite successful business career, and inside I was still this person. I didn't even really think about it. I actually didn't think about it at all. I just carried on doing what I was doing. I loved it. I had two stepchildren that both decided they wanted to come and live with my husband and myself for a while, and we all got on really well, so that was fine. But I found I was starting to find life quite difficult because my husband, he wasn't a bad person. It was just he wanted a wife and a mother. And basically he wanted a girlfriend and a mum. And because I hadn't had any children, so I'm very easy to take that mother role. And so I did this, but it sort of went on for years. And I didn't tell anybody because I was used to not telling. So it's that whole thing about secrets. So I didn't say anything to anyone because I just thought, oh, it'll just cause too much hassle. And then one day I did, to a colleague in work. And I'd made what was, for me, the very first wish I'd had, because I was getting quite distressed. And I kept thinking, oh, I wish I had a friend like I was to others, because everyone would come to me with their stories. And I'd always be able to say, oh, have a look at this or do that. Anyway, so I made that wish. And interestingly enough, a colleague at work, because I was quite ill one day in work, and he actually said to me, he said, so Val, he said, what's going on? And he said to me, he said, you don't deserve that. And I went, and when he said it, I thought, yes, but if you knew what a bad person I am, right, you would know that, yes, actually I do. So after he'd said it for the third time on the third occasion, I went, look, I really have to tell you straight, it's like this. I'm really not a nice person. You think I'm a nice person, but I'm not really. And I told him, and I said, and that's why I never had any children. And this was really crucial for me because he was very smart. And he turned around and he went, so Val, he said, the act of not having children, he said, would that be the act of a good person or a bad person? He said, because surely a bad person would want to spread the badness in the world. And I was then in that catch-22, like, oh my goodness, who am I? Right. And he laughed at me because he said the look on my face was hilarious. And all of a sudden that whole thing that I thought about my life fell apart, but in a really good way. And I've used that experience ever since, because I think that we all hold something like that, a catch-22 belief. So something that we fear about ourselves that we don't tell anyone because we are ashamed, but then actually we work endlessly to prove that it's not true. And the very act of doing that actually proves it's not true. So I've got a friend at the moment who is deeply fears that she's lazy. So she works ridiculously hard all the time. And I say to her, look, a lazy person wouldn't bother. They'd sit with their feet up. So yes, long sort of tail, but yeah, absolutely. It's being able to share something with somebody that you can trust.
I mean, those moments, including that moment when you were a child as well, that would be flagged up now as abuse.
Oh, absolutely. Yes,
I imagine as well that would be flagged up. That moment, was it just a moment as in something which was left behind instantly? And it was only later that you thought, oh, actually, that something's happened there. Was it something that you were able to deal with, spoke to anyone about at the time, outside of putting it in the diary?
No, because I have actually no memory of what happened next. What I remembered it was very interesting, was that ecstatic feeling of thinking, it felt like a dream come true. And actually, I replicated that in relationships. Ever after. So no. And I mean, with my experience now and my background and all the work I've done, you would sort of say something traumatic must have happened that I just blanked out. But I suspect that the something that happened was that nothing happened. In terms of, it may be that this teacher went too far, was ashamed of what he did, and then just left it. I have no idea. And there's part of me that goes, it might be quite interesting to find out. But I think I think the interesting thing is those experiences that we have that might not be anything. It can be something where, somebody's told you off for something right out of the blue, or a change, a shift. And as a child, we take it on board. We think we're responsible. We think it's something that we should do. And then if we don't share it, it does actually then resonate right through our lives until something happens to bring it to the surface. And I also think that things happen at the right time. So I think for me, actually coming across this diary was actually at the point at which I was getting divorced. And it was very interesting because after I'd had this experience of not being ashamed of myself anymore, which I'd buried really deeply, I became a princess in my world. And when I found the diary, interesting enough, the diary was from the Princess comic.
Right.
And so it was so I was a princess at 9 as well. But that then shifted. But what it also made me do was sort of look at the script that we write about our lives. So I had scripted my life based actually upon the character Jane Eyre, because I loved Jane Eyre as a child. And Jane Eyre sort of always, Jane Eyre's great love was this sort of brooding, dark person, which was identical actually to the teacher at school if you'd been going to. So I lived the Jane Eyre story, which was you didn't talk about it. I mean, nowadays, I still love Jane Eyre. But, when Jane Eyre goes to the altar and finds that, her husband-to-be is, still married to a madwoman, she doesn't turn around and give him what for. She runs away and ultimately gets rescued. So it was great. So I changed the script from Jane Eyre to a princess. And as a princess, you could do anything. And I was probably, and I still actually love that story, I have to tell you. But what was really interesting is I then came across a book by Eric Byrne called What Do You Say After You Say Hello? And it talked about script theory. It talks about how we write a script for our life based upon the hero or heroine that we discover when we're quite young. And that can be, in my case, it was Jane Eyre. It can be somebody in a comic. It can be a relative. It can be anyone. But we subconsciously script our life around that and we make those decisions. So years ago, I started working with a very smart woman who never lasted more than 2 years in a company at a really senior level. And she'd go in, she'd get the job, she'd be amazing, and then she'd just do stuff and cause trouble. Anyway, I sat with her one day and I went, we need to find your script character. And she hummed her heart and she said, Val, I think it's Minnie the Minx. Right. And I went, brilliant. So for anyone listening, Minnie the Minx used to get into scrapes. And so we looked and I went, yes, it would sound about right. And I said, do you enjoy it? And she went, well, I said, so now you know. I said, so what happens? I said, you get in and then you become like Minnie and then ultimately you get sacked, but you always get another job and you have great fun in the process. are you happy with that character? And she went, I think I probably am. I said, well, carry on then.
It's interesting. I was listening to somebody talking about midlife crisis and how they viewed their life, and the fact that they talked about it from the point of view of that their life was heading towards a cliff.
Yes.
And that once they fell off the edge of the cliff,
Yeah.
that would be it. So when you get closer and closer to the edge,
Yes.
cram as many things in as possible.
Yeah.
Because once you go over the cliff edge, it's all finished. And actually, she'd realised within her own mind,
Yes.
having drawn that conclusion, that actually all she was doing was imagining the fact that there was a cliff edge.
Yes.
And if instead she imagined a roller coaster
Yes.
with some
Yeah.
ups
Yeah.
and then downs and then
Yeah.
back up again,
Yeah.
it instantly changed her way of thinking about
Yes.
it. But this
Yes.
idea that her life had been set on a particular
Yeah.
path,
Yeah.
where you got to the age of
Yeah.
whatever it was and
Exactly.
suddenly go,
Yeah.
oh, the end's coming
Yes.
quickly,
Yeah.
cram it all in, as
Yeah.
opposed to thinking,
Yeah.
well, it's good today, it might
Yeah.
be bad tomorrow, day
Yeah.
after that,
Yeah.
it might be better
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Val, you've been through so much. When you share and the work that you do now, when you do
Yeah.
the corporate cheerleading,
Yes.
how much of yourself do you give away? Because actually, that story there that you've told is a really personal story there,
Yeah.
and a story of innocence,
Yeah.
the abuse that came in from the teacher, the,
Yeah.
the breach of trust there,
Yeah.
the breach of trust that existed within your marriage as
Yes.
well, and yet you've got a smile on your face while you're telling the story.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to, I believe that we're all here for a purpose. And I think I think for me, it's around that, as I said to you before. Well, I've had those experiences, and you want to make something of those experiences, and so it's very much that. I mean, I think the other thing is I've got a great sense of humour, so I actually I can sort of see the funny side of it. It was a bit like when I was scammed with the internet scam, and I mean there was a lot of aspects of it that were really funny. Particularly, I mean, in actual fact, there was, because when I was scammed, I went to the police when I sort of found out, and the police psychologist who was reading some of the transcripts of the messages that had gone between us is falling about laughing at the one at which I'm actually saying to the person who scammed me, I think you need to be really careful because there are people out there who scam people. And he writes back and goes, oh, how could people do such terrible things? And I write back and said, well, they come from really poor countries and they don't really think very much of the British Army because of things that's happened. And this person who's reading it is just like creased up laughing, going, Val, you just had no idea. But I don't know what it is. I mean, I think I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky because I'm alive. My mum died at the age of 55. And, that was a tragedy. For me, that was probably the first major tragedy I had in my life, was losing my mum. And that I was 26 when my mum died. And so, but I think it's around, I don't know what it is. I think, you have experiences, but, the world is actually a really decent place. I mean, you think of the people who listen to you and listen to radio stations, people who loved Ken Dodd, people who made people laugh. And I just think, you've got two choices in life. You can either let it sort of crush you, or you can take something out of it and say, well, what do I do and how do I make a difference?
That idea, and when we talk about well-being on this program, people talk about not having those bottled up emotions.
Yes.
Do you offer it all out now? Does that ever get you into trouble? Because some people will say, oh, maybe we should all live our life like Val.
No, well, this is
do you share certain things for certain people?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's quite fascinating that I'm actually sitting talking to you on the radio, and this story that I've just told you isn't one I would normally share. I mean, when I was scammed on the internet, right, I did share that because I really did want other people not to fall for the same thing, or to just warn people out there, because I could have that real identity. But even that story, and it was very interesting because I have this theory that you get information as and when you're ready for it. So even with the scam, right, when I was deeply in love in the beginning of this scam, which was a lovely feeling because I'd been widowed, because I married again and then I was widowed. And so actually I said, well, I've done divorce, I've done divorce, widowhood, been scammed. So basically there's only one thing left for me now, which is great joy. But I think with that, I recognise all the signs were there. I mean, if I looked at it now, I would see it straight away. But I didn't want to see it then. I wanted, and I actually enjoyed the experience. And I even really only sort of found out about it when I was ready to handle it. And I think a really important lesson in life is we get information as and when we're ready to handle it. So that something deep within us does keep us safe, even if we don't think it is at the time. But you sort of, when you look back and you go, yes, if I'd have known, so very often we'll go, well, if I'd known then what I know now, I'd have done something different. But actually, maybe we're supposed to be where we are today. So, no, there's not many people know that story. Obviously, there's going to be a whole lot more will know that story now. But, yeah, I think it's circumstances.
Thank you for being so honest about it, Val. We really appreciate it. Now, in terms of then how you sort of feel about life, people will think, now, how do I get a little bit of Val's attitude into my own existence now? Is it about the moment, or you mentioned there, there's the idea of you can live in the moment, but also you can ride out a particular wave, whether or not it's what you believe to be a romance online or not. I mean, how do you marry those two things of trying to look at things and from a distance and go, right, what's really going on here, versus just throw yourself into something and enjoy it where you can? Yeah,
I mean, I think the thing is, how do you deal with worry and stress? I mean, one of my friends said to me a while ago, and he basically said, well, Val, he said, you have to live in the moment. He said, because actually your life's really stressful. So how else could you do it? And I went, well, I've probably done it that way so that I would live in the moment. Because I've seen the consequences of not. I've seen how people can allow the future to really, really worry them. Like the lady you were talking about before, who clearly someone had once told her that, you've got to cram it all into that. She's heard that somewhere. She didn't make that up. She'd heard it. But somebody else would say, well, actually, if you jump off the cliff, you could fly. One of the things I have actually a problem with some of the work in personal development is they talk to people when people are feeling quite down, and then they go, oh, well, it's got to get worse before it gets better. Well, I actually don't believe that. I believe that we're here to write a different story, and that story is actually about love. It's about love and compassion. And so I think the shift for me was when I stopped not liking myself. To start to go, well, actually, maybe I'm not that bad after all. And that took actually years. And one of the core things that I did, and I don't know if this might help people, is because we all know that story of we get something wrong and then we beat ourselves up over it. So it's not that we've got it wrong. I always say it's not what happens, it's what we do next. And where do we make that choice? And so I think it's to start being kinder to ourselves when we get something wrong. I think that's really helpful, and sort of forgive ourselves and say, well, I'm only human. I didn't actually go out to do that. And even if I did go out to deliberately do that, something must have caused me a great deal of pain. That thing that hurt people. But I do think that if we're going to move forward, that it is very much around that's it's not a fear-based, it should be love-based. And I think decisions made out of fear cause us more of what we fear. But it's also we're hardwired to feel fear and to let that have an impact on us. So so one of the things that I do is, because mathematics say, we have a 10-dimensional universe. And I go, well, they do.
This is a new part of the show we got to into now.
Just edit what you do. But I'll kind of go, when I'm facing a situation, I'll go, right, so there could be a quite negative outcome, or there could be like a really good one. So I'll focus on the universe where it's going to be good. And that then shifts. It's that thing, isn't it? That then shifts you to so you react differently, and then other people around you do. So I think that's why I'm called the corporate cheerleader, because people do, I should have worked for the emergency services, but people do tend to ring me when there's a crisis, and they ring me so that I can sort of, when they ring me so that, because I can usually reframe it into something else.
Right.
And I think it's that there's more than one way of looking at things. It's
so interesting how people sort of set a narrative around their life, even unknowingly, and actually that idea, I'm trying to work out what mine is now. But that idea that you've sort of designed a path, and because people do it with work or move on, or they do it with houses. Because people will say, oh, this isn't going to be our forever home. We'll have a couple more after this, because they plan that journey within their mind as well. And also that idea of people saying it's going to get worse before it gets better. We say that all the time, don't we?
Absolutely.
Think, well, it's that. Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example now where that is actually a helpful thing to say.
Well, I don't think it is. You see, I think to myself, if someone's already feeling down in the dumps, to say to them, right, well, it's going to be an awful lot worse. You need to hit crisis point before you'll make a change. And people talk about change is really difficult and change is all of this. And actually, I just go, well, that's actually just a belief, because I did a talk a while back. And I looked at, on that day, about 100 years previously, had been the invention of the first cinematographic camera. And I showed a picture of that, and then I showed a picture of an iPhone, and I went, now, that was a fairly significant change. I said, did it traumatise any of us? No. Most stuff, actually, it's not about change, it's about growth and evolving, right? And it's around. And the great thing I think about when you look at the script for your life is we've been phenomenally successful at living that script. So like the lady who was Minnie the Minx, like I was Jane Eyre, we were amazingly successful, so haven't failed. And that's the thing. And if you've not failed at something which you didn't even know you were doing, think how powerful it is when you kind of go, yeah, do you know what?
And then you start thinking about the phrases people always say, dead end job.
Yes.
Like there's nowhere that this job could ever take me. Based around the idea, you imagine walking into a cul-de-sac, you've just got to turn around and walk out, which might be helpful in some cases.
But the other thing is, and because I always sort of say, so you get a lot of people who, and I've done it, so I know what it's like, where we live fueled on adrenaline. And people say, we need the pressure, we need the stress, we need this because we'll not achieve anything. And I go, well, that's true, but actually we can achieve more if we do something like mindfulness, where we're not actually totally fueled by adrenaline. And it was the day I said this to myself, we can do an awful lot more when we're at ease and at peace with ourselves. But of course, dead end job, rest in peace. What does that mean? Right. No sane person is going to go down a path that takes them there. Right. And I think that is one of the issues that we look at. And, an awful lot of society is quite crazy when we look at some of the things that we do. I mean, when I'm on the tube in London, I don't know how people can live like that. I just don't know how they can. Right. And, and they're all sort of locked and they don't make eye contact with each other and everybody's on their phones and doing whatever. And I'm thinking, and then we talk about an increase in, in poor mental health. And I'm going, well, is this surprising given what we've done, where we've got all that disconnect between family, where people don't have time, where they're under pressure all the time, to earn money to keep a roof over their heads. But they don't see each other and they don't see their family. And, kids get given stuff rather than that, and people are happier now talking to total strangers on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, but then and again we call that the rat race, don't we? This idea that actually we're not human beings as part of that. We're part of the rat race.
Absolutely.
And we scurry around to our jobs and home as opposed to destroying that narrative and turning to the person sat next to you on the tube and saying, how are you getting on today?
Well, I do that thing. I actually talk to people on the tube.
You were going to say you were that sort of person. No, here comes Val.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh my God, yes. No, I mean, I think it is. And it's about gauging things, I mean, one of the things I find is, and I don't know where that comes from, but when you're with someone and you genuinely, care and are interested in that person, you intuitively know, not 100%, but the right things to say. But I also use a phrase which is, you can never say the wrong thing to the right person or the right thing to the wrong person. So that's always sort of helpful. So I have that and that other phrase, which is, what's right for you will not go by you. And so, because people do get very worried about, particularly, if people are suffering with, say, poor mental health and they start to worry about things that they've said and they need a lot of reassurance, it's finding a way to sort of say, I work a lot with values, and we use a values profiling tool, which shows that there are 7 different ways in which we can view the world. And at one end of the spectrum, it's that the belief is that the world is a very scary, threatening place. And a lot of people sort of sit in that. And at the other end of the spectrum is we're part of a global transformation and we collaborate together to make that shift. Now, I live in that end of the spectrum, but, I see how it is for people who are at the other end. And then, I mean, and I looked at if you look at headlines in the paper, you would think an awful lot of them look like they're designed to scare the living daylights out of us. And I think that's what, because as they say, bad news sort of sells. But actually, it's taking that, it's actually dealing with those influences and sort of saying, well, why does that resonate with me and not that? But it is that around sort of saying, I've got one of the things I use in my talks is a picture of a Post-it note, and it goes, good morning, I see the assassins have failed. We were successful, we woke up this morning.
Val, if people want to find out more about the work that you do through Touchpoint Change Consulting, I know you're on LinkedIn, you're on social media, you got websites and things?
You can contact me at valerie.mckay@touchpointchange.co.uk.
And we'll get your details up on our social media, so people want to find out more about the work that you do, and head to your LinkedIn profile as well, which has got loads of information about the work that you do, both within the corporate world, but you've got an incredible story to tell, Val. Thank you for being so honest on the programme today. We really appreciate you sort of sharing it, and those values as well. I'm sure many people will be thinking right now, are they Dennis the Menace? Are they the Menace?
Absolutely.
Roger the Dodger, Billy Whiz, and everyone in between.
Exactly. Yes,
really appreciate you coming on the programme
today. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Our guest today on Mental Health Monday.
All right. Thank you.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.
Okay, so it's Radio City Talk. I'm very pleased to say our next guest on the programme is somebody who is taking part in, well, if you've got kids, you'll know all about Disney on Ice. And Frankie Bridge joins us on the programme. Frankie, it's great to get you on the programme.
Thank you.
You are a mental health ambassador for Mind.
I am.
Hey, but for now, you are concentrating on actually being on Disney. I mean, people just will kill for tickets for this thing. You're going to be actually in it.
I know. I thought I'd take it that step further.
I presume when they say, would you like to be in it, you say, how quickly can you say the word yes? I'm not quite so sure.
I know. Yeah, you know what? It was a no-brainer for me. I think I'm just now living my childhood dream.
Do you get like a character? Do you get handed some mini ears or something like that?
Well, no, because Mickey and Minnie are obviously real. So I am a citizen of Arendelle, actually, in Frozen. That is what I'm going to be.
Oh, wow. So I've got a 3-year-old daughter. So
right.
You can imagine I'm in Frozen Central at the moment.
Yes,
We're trying to upgrade her at the moment to Moana, but we're not sure whether or not the last 15 minutes are too scary. So we haven't done that yet. But I am all about Sven. I am all about Olaf.
Well, Olaf's in the show.
Fantastic.
So, she'll love it. There's definitely a good Frozen section.
What is it, do you think, Frankie, that captures the imaginations of kids? Because you can put kids of any age in front of these characters, these films, these experiences, and they are and it's not just they're enjoying it, they're enraptured by it.
I know, you know what, but I don't think it stops for kids, does it? I think that's why it's so amazing, is us adults are all exactly the same. Like, I went to watch the Disney on Ice Presents Worlds of Enchantment show, and it just does. It is amazing, and you sit and you do look at all the kids, and they're all reciting the words, and then in the interval, all the little girls in their Elsa dresses are all up trying to do what all the ice skaters have just been doing, which I just found so cute. But it is just something, I think it's just lovely. It's that step away from reality and just like a whole magical world, and I don't know, I think it's so nice.
Do you think, I mean, actually, and in terms of like kids and their experiences as well, we try and create environments for them, don't we? We often use Disney as a pretty good yardstick, as perfect examples of the perfect world, because when there's terror and when there's horror, there's a happy ending that comes with it as well.
Yeah, I think, there's always a story and a moral, isn't there, in a Disney film? And I think that's what's good about it. I mean, my kids absolutely love it. And there's a bit of everything. My kids are going to love the Cars and the Toy Story 3 section, probably more than seeing Mummy on the Ice, which is just typical of children. Well, but no, that is what's nice about Disney.
Absolutely. But Lightning McQueen, very exciting,
I know.
Mum's at home. Mum's there when you wake up. Mum's there when you go to bed. Lightning McQueen.
It's very, very true, yeah.
Which are the other sort of films that they're absolutely sort of enraptured by?
At the minute it is more toy Cars. My son, when he was growing up, loved The Jungle Book. He actually loved Cinderella for a really long time as well, actually. I've tried to get them into Frozen, but Mummy definitely enjoys it more.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you talk about trying to get into Frozen, you're going to be in Frozen then. Disney on Ice coming to the Echo Arena the 11th to the 15th of April 2018. Frankie, I know you're a keen ambassador when it comes to all matters mental health as well.
Yeah.
You've talked in the past about your own mental health battles and your ongoing journey with it. Do you find that little moments of zen can take place with a family, that those family get-togethers, those days out can offer you a real sort of respite from, personal demons?
Yeah, definitely. You know what? There's something about being around kids is like, I think it's their innocence and their ability to be happy with the smallest things, like the pure joy on my kids' faces when there's bubbles or when they get on a trampoline, something so small, and it just makes you realize how simple and easy it can be just to appreciate those little things. And that's just seeing those little giggles and those smiles, they do just kind of put everything into perspective, I think.
It's one of those things we've explored on the programme in great detail about, coming out of those sort of teenage years, you get to 14, 15 years of age, and almost reality of life hits home. And actually, it's only later, I think, as you get a little bit older, maybe when you have kids of your own, you realise that there is awe and there is wonder out there again.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what's so nice about doing things with your kids and like as you said about Disney and things like that, it just gives you that little break from reality and of that real life. And I think as you get older, you do go through that little phase, as you say, when you're a teenager, but when you get a little bit older again, you do kind of appreciate all those things again.
Yeah, and it makes you assess as well, doesn't it? I think your own childhood and your own experiences and the things that maybe your parents did for you that put you in a positive place, which otherwise you wouldn't have noticed because at the time you were just being a kid.
Yeah, and I think that's what kids should be doing. As a parent, I don't expect them to notice all the little things that we do around them, and I kind of don't want them to. I kind of like them to think that these things all just happen and that's just life, because as you said, as you get older, you do kind of go, oh, I kind of wish I appreciated that a bit more when I was younger. And I think it's nice for kids to stay kids for as long as possible, personally.
Yeah, and what we're talking about Disney, it's funny actually, because now when I show my daughter like Beauty and the Beast, they're pretty timeless in terms of what they look like. There's a couple from like the 1950s and 60s that have dated slightly.
Yeah.
But actually, when Chip blows bubbles on Beauty and the Beast, like I laughed at that when I was a kid, but then also my daughter, who is 3, laughs at that now.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's what's so lovely about it, is you can then share it with them. Like, I was so excited to get to watch those films again. Don't get me wrong, after the 50th time, I was a bit like, should we move on to a different one? But it's nice to have those moments with them where you're like, oh, I used to do this when I was a little kid.
There was a brilliant stat that came out about B-Movie was the most, it's not a Disney film, but it was the most streamed movie on Netflix by one individual who watched it basically every day. Every day. And what is it? What's the record in your house for films going on? And then we had Tarzan on in our house the other day, and my daughter just went, I want to watch Tarzan again. And I went, it literally just finished. Now, I want to watch it again.
Yeah, we've had that with pretty much all of them, to be honest. And it always seems like as well, like I've only seen certain parts of the film. Like I'll only ever catch the same bit, and then they'll watch it again, and I'll still catch that same bit. And then one day, in pure fluke, I'll go, oh, didn't know this bit was in the film, because I'll catch another section because they'll just keep putting it on loop throughout the day.
What's the film that you want to sit down? Is there a Disney film in particular that you think, oh, this is the one for me?
I don't know. There's so many. The ones I haven't seen for a while, really, I suppose. We did have Mulan on the other day, which I hadn't seen for years and years, which was quite nice to sit and watch something different. When my son first started watching Cinderella, I did love that. I could just sit and watch that for hours because I was like, yes.
The strange thing about that, though, the first 25 minutes is just a cat chasing a mouse, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
You're waiting for the ball to take place, and that's about the last 10 minutes, and the rest of it is just a cat running around. Frankie, at the moment on the programme, we're working a lot on working with young people and mental health and getting sort of positive messages out there for young people, letting young people be aware that they have mental health. I just wondered, maybe, given your own experience and the fact that you've sort of been in the limelight both as a child and now as an adult as well, what are those things for you, that those key messages that you think should really stick with young people, that we can get across to young people about being aware about their mental health?
I think, which I know is like the most obvious one, is being open to talking to people as much as possible. Because it really does make a difference. Like, I've had times where I've thought things for a really long time and haven't voiced them out loud, and then the minute I say them out loud, I think, okay, yeah, no, that's silly, or like that's not the truth. You could be thinking something bad about yourself or whatever. And I think just being able to find, even if it's one person just to say these things to, really does make a difference. And also I think the other main thing is that you're 100% not alone. And I guarantee if you talk to 3 of your friends, even, at least one of them would have thought the same things of you as you at some point in their life. And I think that's been the biggest shock for me with the whole thing, is just how many people I already knew have been through their own experience with mental health.
Brilliant advice. How many of your mates have tweeted you saying, can you box us off some tickets?
Oh,
because you can guess what my next question's going to be.
I've been saying that to everyone. Well, you better be there. I was going to say that to you. I hope to see you there.
Absolutely. Well, we're up in Liverpool, of course, so 11th to 15th of April, the Liverpool Echo Arena. So if all your mates in London are there, go and get us tickets for the SSE. The Echo Arena is where it's at, Frankie. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us on the programme.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
On Radio City Talk.